Hi guys. So if you remember the last one of the recent videos I did was the engine service, and I spoke about the four key components of the diesel engine, namely power, lubrication, cooling, and the one that I didn't do when I did the engine service last week was the fuel. In other words, I need to change the fuel filters. Now normally I change them every sort of 200, 300, 400 hours, because depending on the quality of the fuel that you get. If you're in places where the fuel is not good, then you'll need to change them more regularly. But I haven't changed mine for a couple of years. We're now nearly on 300 on this new engine, so I'm going to change all three. So I'll take you into the engine compartment. So before we start the service, I'm just going to show you. First of all, that Racor filter, that R90P, is the one that I've put in extra, just to give me more protection. That's a water trap primary filter. That was the original water trap, that with the blue cover. So I'm going to replace both those primary filters. And then as we come around into the engine, this here is the fuel filter. So I'm going to, this is the fuel filter. So this is the fuel filter on the engine. So I'm going to replace this one as well. So you can see the selection of filters. This is the Yanmar filter. Yanmar spares are very expensive here in South Africa, so you can get alternatives. Alternatives are the Lucas or the Gud, and this is the Baldwin filter. This is for the big primary filter. These for the secondary filters, and this one's for the fuel filter on the engine. Okay, I've opened the tap and I've drained out the diesel from the filter itself, so I can undo the filter, and I'll have to do the same on this one, but you can see now the diesel's finished dripping. To get this cap off at the bottom, I've used one of these special tools. It's like a leather strap that grips it and tightens or loosens it, and it works quite effectively. Both the filters off. Okay,
right.
You can see this is the secondary primary. That's it here. This is the cap at the bottom I'm showing here, and this thing goes over the top. And what's critical is there's a very thin O-ring here. I don't know if you can see where my finger's pointing. It's critical that those O-rings are on, because if those O-rings, if you lose them and you put the new filter back and you don't have those O-rings in the right place, she's going to draw air and she'll never pull fuel through there, and you'll never start your engine. Okay, so be very, very careful when you change these filters. Make sure you don't lose any O-rings, and you make sure that all the seals, everything are there, and that they're back in place before you put the new ones back. It's the two filters. Quite a finicky job getting all the O-rings in place, etc., etc. So now we're going to open that tap, but before we do that, we're going to replace the filter on the engine on that side. So we've taken that off, as you can see. Finicky job. This is the new filter. I'm going to screw this one back on, and then it has the electrical connection underneath. That's it. So now we've got the new filter. Yeah, but before we do, I now have to open the stopcock. So the primary stopcock is there. I've got to undo that, okay, and then we start priming. I now have to open the stopcock, which is here.
Okay, you can see the fuel coming into the bottom of the filters.
So now what happens, the beauty of this filter is that I start pumping. pump here. That's it. Okay, so she's drawing. Did you open the bottom?
No, no,
She's just running out.
just pouring out.
And then take the camera around with you if you want. So first talking to the camera, tell us what you've been doing. And then
Okay,
you can show around and
The purpose this morning was to change the fuel filters. We had two filters in line, and
primary filters. Remember?
primary fuel filters,
And that's the secondary engine filter.
and we wanted to change the two primary filters plus the secondary filter, which is that filter over there. And the two primary filters are the filters that we're looking at the moment. We, after making sure that we had drained the fuel from the filters, we then took the filters out of their brackets and we replaced them. The important points being the gaskets and the O-rings. They all have very small O-rings on them, and we then put the filters back. However, when we put both the filters back and the secondary filter, there was an air leak in one of the primary filters, which we tried to correct. We were unable to correct it, so we then decided to bypass that filter and go through the one primary filter. That's the red filter that you see on the left hand side. We then took the main fuel supply line off the first primary filter, fed it around the motor and connected it back to the main primary filter, the red filter over there. That solved the problem of the air leak. We have just started the motor again, and all seems to be working well.